Let's go back into our back office software. Okay, so if there's no more questions on employee setup, we're going to move over into inventory now. So I'm signed in as an administrator. I would just like to share with you some of the setup that's done in the background. Everyone does not have access to this section, but I like people to have an understanding on the work that's gone behind the scenes. And I do want to put a shout out to a lot of people on this call. I think there's a lot of you had a major impact in the setup of the inventory on this call at one point in time over the years. So thank you and kudos to everyone who did put their input in here. So this is the list of the inventory of the system. So when I go into the system and I take a look at inventory specifically, if I'm going to take a look at my food and beverage, I'm going to see that everything that is purchased for food and beverage is listed in the system. If I take a look at packaging, I'm going to see that packaging is listed in the system. You'll notice that the names are nice and easy to know. They're not like the old way, and some stores have like FSTS sandwich container. It's simply a Big Mary container, a carton, a bag, a lid, a liner. It's nice and simple. Keep it easy. So if I go into, let's say, let's take a look at lids, for example. Everything is broken down to how it's purchased. So if I go into inventory, I can see that I buy it by the case. There's 16 sleeves in the case, and there's 75 per sleeve. All that information is there. If I take a look at a food product, we go into food. If I take a look at chicken, so if I take a look at pieces raw, I buy it by the case. There's 20 birds in the case, and there's 9 pieces per bird. That's what a piece costs me. But then I take that piece and we cook it. And when we cook it, it actually translates into using breading and batter dip and oil. And there's other things that are going behind the scenes, so it's raised my cost. And then we take a look at a recipe of food, and if I go into a sandwich, and I take a look at a Big Mary sandwich, we can see that a Big Mary uses an ounce of mayonnaise and a Big Mary carton and even a slice of pickle. I know we had Darren Tremblay, who's on the phone call, years ago, open up one of the jars of pickles and count every single slice of pickle in it just because we needed to know how many pickles were in a jar.
Yep, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you. So there's a lot of work that's been gone into the background on the inventory. The first thing I want to cover is how do we work into the theoretical cost of an item? And there's two main ways of doing this. Some companies take averages. So when I sell a Big Mary combo, I'm going to go on the assumption that they're having taters and on the assumption that they're having coleslaw and the assumption that they're having a can of Pepsi. And this is what companies like Subway or any of the companies are done where there's a lot of different choices along the line. Like even a burrito place will take an average. However, when we did the inventory years ago for Mary Brown's, we wanted a close enough actual food cost theoretically, if that can make sense in the system. And the reason why we did this is we understood that there really might not be more than 10 to 20% of stores doing inventory at the time. Now, we're hoping to get that to 50, 60, 70% over the next year or two. But we really needed the head office staff to be able to go into a store and run the sales mix report and see, based on what was sold, what would their food cost be, not based on an average what their food cost would be. So what I'm trying to get to is if I was to sell a combo and I go into my meals and dinner section and I pick my Big Mary combo, you'll notice that even though I sell this item for $8.69 in the system, the only recipe that's being depleted is the Big Mary sandwich itself. There is no notation here on the taters, on the salad, and on the drink in here. So what this does in turn is inflate my cost of my combo to only be 24% instead of normally a 35 or 36%. And the reason why we do this is because the cashier hasn't selected yet fries or taters, or maybe a poutine, or maybe an onion rings. So if I take a look at a sales report, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I really want to make sure everyone understands on how the inventory is set up. So I'm going to run that sales report again for last Friday. So I take a look at my can pop, for example. So can pop, I sold 126 cans of pop, but I only brought in $11.61, which cost me $47 for the cans of pop. I'm negative in my food cost. The same thing's going to apply in my small salads. When I look at my small salads, we sold 42 small coleslaws, but we only brought in $5.67, and I'm working on a negative profit. The reason being is these were given away at $0 as part of our combos. So when I look at my Big Mary again in my setup here, we are taking $2.05 here when the Big Mary was selected. And when the cashier selects the small salad, we're taking 49 cents here because they selected the coleslaw versus 48 cents here when they select the potato. And then everything added together will give you a grand total report of your food cost at the bottom. Which this one's way out of whack for some reason for my pop-ins that day. But does everyone understand on how the inventory was set up for Mary Brown's now? For when we're looking at a sales report, we have to understand that the combos are only pulling the main item and not the choices that have yet been selected by the cashier. So we can't look at the food cost on specific combos. We have to look at it as a whole. Does anyone have any questions on that? Because I want to make sure we get that, because this is a big part of everyone's BDC's role in helping the stores be profitable.
Well, the only way, to my understanding, Jared, is to see their true variance, is to look after they've completed a weekly inventory count, they've saved and processed that inventory, and now they've gone in and looked at their food cost report as a 4-page report line for line, their theoretical versus their actual, in percentage and in dollars.
Correct, exactly. And you're going to see those line by lines. But before we even get to the person who's doing inventory, by leaving the setup this way, it allows head office to walk into any store that clearly, obviously, on the new version, and be able to say, based on your sales, you should have ran at this percentage, exact percentage, because it's not an average of, we think you're going to order taters, or we think you're going to have it with this. And that's the reasoning the inventory was set up this way versus an average of stuff.
So when you select the sales by department, and this is not a particular report that I go into that often, so I'm not too familiar with this report, but
okay,
this will give you an exact percentage theoretically of where your food costs should be weekly,
absolutely,
even if a store is not doing weekly inventory?
Absolutely, yes. So let me go run this for a different day, because that day our pop-ins were way out of whack that day. And they still, if something's up with pop-ins, we'll have to take a look at. But based on, this is a very, let's run it for today, because I didn't ring in any pop-ins today. Based on today's training sales that we've rung into the system, we have not counted any inventory today in our demo since we started this morning. And I can run this report as a BDC and say to the store, based on your sales, you ran at 34.9%. There's no average here anywhere.
And this is basing it from their net sales?
Yeah, this is of their menu mix, because of the items they rang in, their salads they rang in, the choices the customers selected with their combos, and the modifications that were selected, and everything tied together based on what happened on this report. It cost you $1,350.43. That's running you a food cost of 34.09. No inventory needed to be counted at all. This is going to give it to you based on that menu mix.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and the reason why we did this is because we knew a lot of stores wouldn't count inventory. So we needed head office to be able to get as close as actual costing as possible. Okay.
So, Jared, this is Daryl.
Yeah.
So this report you can pull on a daily basis, and that's your theoretical food cost number.
That's correct. That's your theoretical food cost number.
Okay.
So also, Jared, if we ran this report from Monday to Sunday, and looked at the food cost theoretical and percentage in the department, and then we ran the food cost report, theoretical totals, they should match identically, should they?
Oh, absolutely, yes. This is the same information
Okay.
on the other report. The
Same.
other report's just showing
Okay.
different stuff, yeah.
Okay.
All I'm getting at a little bit is these numbers here on the individual departments don't really make sense based because of combos. You can really only look at the total. Because obviously I didn't run at 137% for sides. It's just that my sides were given for free because they were in combos, right? It's the totals that make a difference. Because if I drill into sides and I take a look again, I can see, okay, my large gravy was given away. There was no revenue brought in for this large gravy because that was in the 18-piece feast I sold. Same thing with the large taters. And that's what's making the sides category 137.97%. But if you take a look at my meals and dinners category, I'm only running at 25% because there's a lot of things in here that aren't being accounted for yet, like the large taters and like large gravy, because they weren't selected yet.
It's Noah here. From my experience, the difference between the theoretical and actual should be about 2%. So if your score has, for example, he is supposed to be about 36.09. If your score is 37 or 38%, that means they're wasting a lot. If it's below 36, that means they're underportioning.
Good. Okay. So let's go into go ahead.
This is Daryl. I do have one other question. So I remember I had sent you an email last week about some of the reports not being updated at some of the franchise locations.
Yep.
Will that be you said that's going to be taken care of by the end of the month?
That's part of this rollout, yes. A lot of stores are on older versions of the system. What you're seeing here today is what's in the new system.
Okay. And that's going to be rolled out chain-wide?
Yes, chain-wide. Okay.
Do we have a date on that yet, Jared?
Yeah, the goal is by the end of the month.
Okay.
Someone else was going to have a question there in the background?
Yeah, Jared, it's Dwayne. What we're looking at here now in terms of your menu items and so forth, that's all set up by default, is that correct?
Everything is set up by default in terms of the menu items. There has been some reorganization of the categories, as we can see in the system here. We've, instead of just one category that used to be called print coupons and specials, there's actually, I think, 5 new categories. So we have digital coupons, which stand for all the internet monthly coupons. LCM specials replaces store specials, which are things that your stores.
Yeah, well, that's great. What I'm saying is that you would have to enter your inventory online and things of this nature in order to get a true cost value, would you not?
Absolutely. I'm about to get into that section in here, yes, where you would actually have to enter your inventory. Yes, everything I've shown you up to this point is just theoretical.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Do franchisers have access to the inventory and menu items that you're showing us here today?
You don't have access to change those. You only have access to enter your inventory because the inventory is what the inventory is for your store. So we're setting that up at the head office level. You should have no need to ever change those. All you need to do is actually count those inventory and receive that inventory.
Right. Is the items that are normally sold here already set up in the system under inventory?
Correct. Everything that you purchase in your store on your product guides are set up in the system.
Okay.
I think too, Jared, what he's trying to say is what you just took us through here that's up on the screen right now with Small Potato. Is he able to go in and access it just to view it as a recipe? What he can actually see in his system, if I'm understanding him correctly.
Okay, so yes, you can't do it from what I just showed you in this method, what you're seeing on the screen right now, but what you could do is in the reporting system, there are 2 reports that you can run. The first report would be called inventory. This is actually going to list you every single item that's in your system that you would purchase or that's been programmed that you can purchase. So if I run this, once your system is updated, you would actually see all the items in your system and how it was set up by pack size for every item in the system. And then secondarily to that, you would also be able to run the recipe report if you were ever curious to see the recipes. And it would show you every menu item in the system and what the recipe was to make up that menu item. So when I say a 10-finger and sauce, you'll be able to see, okay, we're allocating this, 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 and this. And in this case, we say chicken finger cooked. I can go down and drill into this stuff, and I can see my chicken finger cooked is using breading, batter dip, and oil. So you have access to this through your reporting.
And that's wonderful. The big thing I was getting at is that I have no access to that within the setup. I cannot touch the inventory, menu items. I can't see anything. Now, if I can see it through the reports, that's great. But to me, the inventory would have to have what I'm paying GFS and other ones, and I have no ability to access inventory even through setup.
Yeah, that's correct. Like, what would you need to access it from here? Why would you need to access, let's say, the gravy brown from the setup? Why would you need to access?
I'm talking only inventory, Jared.
Yeah, I get it.
The inventory button. Only the inventory button.
So what we're giving you access to do, which I'm about to get through, is this inventory button here, where you would actually do your purchases. You'd actually count inventory. This inventory button is the setup that we don't give the stores access to, because this is controlled by head office. But we want you to use this button over here, where you're going to count and purchase your inventory.
Okay.
Is that where you're talking about?
That's where ultimately I was going, and I had a bunch of questions. That was the last one. So yeah, okay, I'm there now.
Perfect. So I'm going to go over this. I think I get where you're going. You thought that this button was your inventory button, but it keeps on coming up saying you don't have access to it, correct?
Correct.
Right. Okay, so this is actually where you're going to go over here. I'm going to go over that right now, and this is where we actually